through songs we sing, through the preacher, through things that happen to us. But we must be listening to hear what he has to say. All the children are going to be in here with us for this month. And I want to challenge you children. Okay? Listen, children. I want to challenge you that, God is no respecter of persons. That means whether you're 90, 9, 5, 4, and so on, if you have a heart that wants to know Jesus, he's going to reveal himself to you. But if you say, well, I'll get interested when I get older, you probably won't. You probably will, because the next year you're going to say, well, once I get a little older, then I'll really start paying attention. Even as a boy in the church that I went to, I listened. Now, I had the whole service memorized. I was really listening, but there were things that I heard, and there were, I had a hungry heart, even as a child. I was sensitive to God, because, you children, you listening, children? I'm going to share a story from my childhood here. When I was a boy, I lived about maybe 200 yards, 300 yards from the church that we went to. And then every day, when my mom would come home from work, I'd go and wait for her. I'd go out to the church and sit on the steps and wait for her. But many times I'd sit there, I'd think about God. My heart was, even as a young child, was wondering, was curious about God, that God that made everything. And God really spared me from a lot in my life. I didn't become a Christian until I was in my early 20s. But a lot of the bad things that my friends got into, I didn't get into. So, God really spared me from going through a lot of things that could have been hurtful to me and could have changed the way that I live my life. So the point is that if you say to yourself, say, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to hear what the preacher's saying. Because when a preacher's preaching, what a preacher wants to do is preach what God is saying. Right? You may not have heard God speak before, but you can hear him speak through your parents, through the preacher, through a message, through preaching, through worship. You can hear God speak. And it will change your life. Now, I'm going to share something else with you because you're going to be in here all month with us, just on Wednesday nights. How many of you know who a very, very wise man was in the Bible besides Jesus? Raise your hands.
Solomon.
Krista. Good job, Krista. Is there something in the Bible about this? I'm supposed to go to her first, right? And then what's the next step? Take a witness? I know you know Barbara. Solomon. And Solomon said, he once spoke, he wrote a whole book to a young person. It's called Proverbs. It speaks to young men. It speaks to young ladies. It has been one of the most beneficial books in my life because it teaches you how to live with people, how to do business, how to choose friends. You listening, young people? Friends, how to choose good friends, godly friends. But Solomon wrote another book. And Solomon, he did not listen to his own wisdom. Solomon got off from following God. And he began to go through a real depression, a real seeking for meaning in life. And Solomon's the one that said, all is vanity, vanity of vanities. Vanity means useless. But one thing Solomon said in that book, he said, young person, do not forget your Creator in your youth. When you're young, don't forget. Don't forget about your Creator. You have a long life ahead of you. Maybe. I can't say how long your life is going to be. Do you know sometimes children die? It's sad, but it happens. However long life you have, don't forget your Creator. Because you know what happens? And some of you children, are your parents sometimes forgetful? Yes or no? Yes. I know where you live. Yeah. Very forgetful. Because as you get older, you tend to forget more. Right?
No.
You know, if you live long enough, you're going to get old. Right? If you live long enough, you're going to get old. He says, but don't forget your Creator while you're young, because the days are coming when you're going to, I'm paraphrasing here, the days are coming when you're going to be old. And there's one thing that you don't want to have when you get to be old, and that's, William, and that's regret. You know, regret means when you've done something, then you turn around and say, I wish I wouldn't have done that. There were some decisions in my life that I regret. I wish I wouldn't have made that decision. If I would have made another decision, my life would have been a lot better. So you don't want to get to where you get older and you regret because you've lived your life following the world. Because you will forget. You know, because one day you're going to be old enough where you're going to have to make a choice. One day you're going to move out of the house, hopefully at least by 35. You're going to move out of the house, and then you're going to be a big boy. You're going to be a big girl. And you're going to be independent, and you're going to have the choice to make. Am I going to serve my Creator? Because you know what, church? Part of what you learn when you come to church, part of what you learn from your parents is, you listening, children? Is that God is dependable and God is faithful. And we can trust God with our life. So don't forget about it. You know, when I was old enough to kind of do my own thing, I didn't go to church. I stopped going to church. And I started living my own life. And Solomon goes on to say, he says, rejoice in your youth. You know, rejoice in it. Right? Young people, lots to look forward to, lots of excitement. But then he says, but remember this. Now he's speaking to young people. He says, remember this. That one day, this Creator, you're going to meet Him. Face to face. This is not just about God as some fairy tale up in the air, up in the sky. One day, however you've lived your life, whether you've lived it for God, remember we talked about sowing in the spirit, or whether you've lived for yourself, sowing to the flesh, you're going to meet God one day. And all these older people around you, we're all going to meet God. We're going to stand before God, and we're going to give an account of how we lived our life. And we're going to, it talks about receiving what was done in the body, whether it be good or bad. So, I want to encourage you, as young people, that this month while you're in here, that next week we're going to give you a little sheet that's going to help you follow along with the message. And it's going to help you take a few notes. And there might even be a few prizes.
Wow.
Right? So, we're not bribing you, but we're motivating you to do it, to listen. And then we might have some of you giving some testimony of what God has done in you through the services or through the worship or wherever. So, what do you think about that?
You better pay attention.
Kiddies? Sounds good? So don't look at this as, I'm going to be in there again. Look at it as, I'm going to hear God. It all has to do with your attitude. If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, remember our VBS a couple years ago? If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, what happens, kids? Barbara? The kids couldn't
I'm
make it.
too old to answer.
Okay, where's my witness? She's a troublemaker. If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, what? You shall be filled. It's a promise that God has. You know why most people are bored in church? Because they go to church and they don't expect to receive anything. You know why most people come out, oh, another church service? Because they have no expectation. They're not hungering for God. They don't want to know God more. You know, the children of Israel, they saw God do all these wonderful things. Manna from heaven, the Red Sea parting, all these miracles. So they knew God in a certain way. They knew God for all the things that He could do, His mighty works. But then Moses was there as well. And Moses got to speak to God. Can you imagine that? Speaking to God.